arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you.
Welcome to the Bassline, everyone. Richard Hirschman is the mortician and embalmer who first came forward before others did to reveal that he had been noticing unusual rubbery white clots in the veins and arteries of the deceased. He had never seen such a thing before, the rollout of the injections falsely marketed as vaccines that were foisted upon the public. Since then, he's appeared in documentaries, he has done several interviews, he has presented extensive documentation of his horrific findings, but has there been any response by the government or by regulatory bodies to address this terrible discovery? It is my great privilege to welcome to the Bassline the Honorable Mr. Richard Hirschman. How are you today, Mr. Hirschman? Welcome to the Bassline. Can you hear me, Richard?
Yeah, it's coming in a little weak, but I can hear you.
Oh, really? I'll try to amplify my voice as well as I can.
There we go. That's better.
Okay. Well, first of all, everyone, I want to thank you for tuning in. We have another fascinating program. Of course, we've interviewed doctors on this program. We've interviewed scientists. We've interviewed lawyers. We've never interviewed a mortician before. And I would say there's anecdotal evidence, there's anecdotal discussion, but then there's also the anecdotal evidence of a mortician when the particular topic of inquiry is about mortality in our society. So, there are so many metrics by which I feel we can see clear indications that harm has been done as a result of the mass inoculation campaign that was implemented so aggressively. And I've been saying recently, I think the lens of history apparently has beaten the lens of science to the punch, because while scientists debate back and forth about what the data indicates, if we use historical precedent, we can see that something is clearly wrong in terms of the unusual number of sudden deaths that are occurring, in terms of just the language that we use in our society, hashtag sudden death trending on social media, the term SADS, sudden adult death syndrome, the reference to these experimental shots as the clot shot, the killer vaccine, the kill shot, the suicide shot, the Depop jab. I wouldn't imagine a good product would have those nicknames. I've used those examples before, but today we bring a new element into our gathering of evidence here, and that is the firsthand testimony of Mr. Richard Hirschman. You may have seen him in other interviews. You may have seen him in the Died Suddenly documentary. He was the first, and I believe there have been several others since, but he's the first, to my knowledge, to present to the public that unusual rubbery clots were being found in people's bodies, in the bodies of the deceased, which could not accurately be called blood clots because they didn't really consist of blood and they lacked the iron content to call them blood clots, properly. But they were rubbery, they were white, and in his vast experience, Mr. Hirschman's never seen such a thing before, and I believe other morticians who witnessed the emergence of these clots also agreed they had not seen this previously. What could be the cause? So before we even get into that discussion about those gruesome clots that you brought to public attention, Mr. Hirschman, I want you to tell us about the other metrics, because of course the clots are sort of sensational and horrific and just unique, and they would necessarily draw attention to them as a subject, but you've witnessed other things in your profession that are also concerning. So could you just lay out some of the things that you've observed before we get to the discussion of these terrible clots?
Well, sure. You're 100% right as far as the images of the strange clots are what is extremely alarming and very hard to not see once you see them. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at those images and of those white fibrous clots and say that somehow looks normal. And you're right. I reached out to several morticians. Some had many years of experience. I mean, at the time, my first 20 years of experience, I didn't see these strange clots. However, some of the other abnormalities, which you're asking me about now, are we see I refer to it as like dirty blood or sandy blood or coffee grounds. If the blood is changed, it's not the same as it used to be. I've got sometimes blood starting to thicken and coagulate quickly. I mean, much quicker than I've seen in the past, where the blood sometimes almost wants to kind of stick to the table. Now, those, a lot of times it still looks like blood, but it's different. There's just something different. It's hard to put my finger on it. We're seeing an unusual amount of people that are dying of cancers that are rapidly, apparently taking people out rapidly. Sometimes we're hearing from the families, they just found out they had cancer weeks ago, or within, the last year or two, they're, some of them are dying before they could even actually get much treatment. They still have their hair in their head. Like typically in the past, when we would have our typical cancer patients that die, you would see signs that they were fighting the cancer's fight. And I'm not saying that I've never had cases before where somebody died shortly after diagnosis, but not in the numbers that I'm seeing them now. It's the same thing with fetal demise and stillbirths. I'm not saying that those kind of deaths never have happened in the past. They do happen. What I am saying is it seems as though there is a rapid rise in those types of deaths, of stillbirths and fetal demises. 20 years of experience from 2001 all the way up through 2021. I mean, I've seen these kind of strange cases on a rare occasion, so rare that some of times, I can actually, remember some of the details of the people that happened, 15 years ago. But now we're seeing it so often; it's become the kind of new normal, and it's extremely alarming. And I'll give an example that it was not that far, fairly recent, within the last several weeks. I was at a funeral home, and we had 3 babies in the cooler at one time. Where sometimes when in the past, when babies die of stillbirth or fetal demise, you might get one here or there. But to have 3 in a cooler at one time, they all picked up within a short period of time of one another. I mean, that's alarming. And what's even more alarming is in the past year, that's happened more than once. So those are some issues that are abnormal.
Wow.
Definitely on the rise. And it's highly concerning. In the beginning, back in 2021, what was causing these clots? You started with your introduction. They were calling it the clot shot, and they were starting to call it the clot shot before I came out publicly with what I'm seeing. And when I was hearing those terms, and I'm looking at the table in front of me and working on the deceased and finding these strange clots, my mind was saying to, y'all, people just don't understand. These are not they're clots like I've never seen. I mean, we've seen blood clots in the past. I mean, it's part of our job. I mean, we do see them. The blood clots are typically red jelly-like, and they're not these white fibrous strands that we are now seeing. And here lately, within the last several weeks, I've seen, somewhat of a decrease in the size of some of these. But what's crazy is, as soon as I say that, I'll get busy again, and I'll have it one after another after another. I mean, it's a roller coaster.
Wow.
And I don't know why the reduction. It's possibly has something to do with people aren't taking as many boosters, and maybe the body is able to heal itself from some of these things. But the more we infect, or the more we inject, the more problem we're
But there's
causing.
also the disturbing possibility that some people have sort of held out longer, but have been living with these terrible clots for a longer period of time, and maybe even having not received boosters, have been injured and then are deceased, over, again, a longer period of time and not as immediately as another recipient.
Yes, and there's things that I've learned over the last, I came out in January of 2021, January of 2022. This coming out, speaking out has put many people in contact with me, many different, I've had conversations and been working with and sending some of these samples to, pathologists and scientists for research. We're trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I couldn't 100% claim that it was the vaccine causing this issue. I just know that it didn't start. I didn't start seeing this until early 2021.
Right. I mean, for the sake of objectivity, we can't just immediately say it's because of X. However, the timeline was more than suspicious, right? It has to be your first assumption, and then we want to, withhold judgment until we've looked into it. But the timeline was beyond suspicious. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
Absolutely, 100%. And I tried to be objective, and, close people to me, like my wife would sit there and say, you can't, you just got to be careful that we keep an open mind, because we can be wrong about some of our thoughts on this. But I've got a paper right here in front of me that was pre-printed October 13th of 2021. That says SARS-CoV-2 spike protein induces abnormal inflammatory blood clots. Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, this is before I publicly came out. And the spike protein. So there are a number of the doctors and scientists that I'm in communication with that believe that the COVID virus itself can cause this. But then I also have other papers in front of me, one here from the New England Journal of Medicine, published April 16th of 2021, says SARS-CoV-2 vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia. Got another one from the American College of Cardiology, dated June 8th of 21, talking about this VITT. So there's papers now. They were acknowledging these thrombotic issues, these clotting issues, and this is due to the COVID vaccine. I mean, they labeled this to the vaccine. Of course, in the beginning, they back in this time, as early as this is, again, it's fascinating, because people ask me when I started seeing these clots. It's in early 2021. I usually estimated that it was, I said May, but it could have been as early as March or April, but definitely no later than June. I didn't come out publicly with what I was seeing until January of 2022. So they knew that there were these abnormal clots. being caused by the vaccine.
Right.
And the reason why these scientists now believe this, the vaccine is the main culprit, and we're not going to say 100%, is because the vaccine has a phospholipid bilayer, or the layer around it is a phospholipid. The spike protein itself has all kinds of little proteins on it that are phosphorus in nature, and they think there's a phosphorylation issue going on that is causing this. So in October of 2021, they said SARS-CoV-2 spike protein causes abnormal clotting. The spike itself. So can the virus cause it? Yes, it can. We believe it can. But then my question to you, Jeremiah, and to anybody listening, if they know that the spike itself causes abnormal clotting, then why are we injecting it into millions of people and billions
children,
of people?
Right, and babies, right?
Yes, and what's even worse than that, Jeremiah, is the mRNA is put into your body so that your body creates the spike protein that they already acknowledge can induce abnormal clotting.
Right. Well, Dr. Sucharit Bhakti had warned specifically of the clotting. I don't know what kind of research he had done, but he seemed to be very well versed in mRNA. And I remember when they had withdrawn the J&J shot within days of it being first available, they said, oh, wait, there seems to be a blood clot issue. Then they said, oh, it's a minor issue. And they put it back on the market. And then J&J quietly, as it was pointed out on this program by Dr. Henry Ely, I didn't realize that J&J actually withdrew their own emergency use authorization. And they said, our first foray into vaccine making isn't going so well, fresh on the heels of the baby powder scandal. And now we have AstraZeneca withdrawing their shot and citing that, well, its side effects can be deadly, rare, very rare, but deadly and significant to the extent that we're withdrawing it from the market. Remember, this was mandated for people.
Yes.
I mean, that's a flagrant violation of human rights, everyone. And if you don't agree with me, all I can say to you is you have a very impoverished concept of human rights. If you think it's fair to do this to people, you know, why do I continue to have this show on a weekly basis? Because this is an unresolved matter, unfortunately. It's unresolved in every way, legally, medically, and for the future of our children. So, you know, I mean, we're going to continue to discuss these things as long as this remains a problem with, you know, which I hope, you know, we can resolve bit by bit, but some of it will never be resolved because obviously you can't bring people back to life. And so much injury has been inflicted. It's just, it's unimaginable. And we literally await, unfortunately, the unfolding horror of what's occurring. Because, I mean, like, I just have this news app on my phone. I mean, I think it's literally generically called News App. And, you know, every day, 30-year-old just dropped dead, 20-year-old dropped dead, 40-year-old, 50-year-old. 60-year-olds. I mean, you know, folks that, hey, you know, someone dies when they're in their 60s and you say, oh, wow, that's fairly young. Maybe the person was going to live until they were 90 and they died because they took an unnecessary medical intervention. So, I mean, people not seeing the magnitude of what has occurred is just beyond me. And I want to ask you specifically, Richard, in terms of, I know that, you know, you just mentioned that you'd sent out these Clots, you sent out this content to various labs. You started going into it a little bit more. We know they're not blood clots per se. What is our up-to-date understanding about these clots? I mean, I know you just mentioned some comments along those lines, but could you just tell us in terms of, you know, you initially sent this out to one lab. How many people have taken a look at this? How far down the road are we in terms of an investigation into what the hell that stuff is?
You know, you bring up a great point. And people have asked me that kind of question a lot. I don't have access directly myself to labs. I mean, and just ask the average person, hey, why don't you go ahead and take a sample of, I don't know, whatever it is, and just send it to a lab and have them analyze it. A lot of the labs are going to look at you like, or they're not even going to take you. They're not going to listen to you. You're not a doctor. You're not a scientist. You're not a university. You're not anything. So you're going to be shut down. So I don't have direct access to labs, number one. However, I have sent them to several doctors and scientists who then might have access to some of these labs. Now, Dr. Ryan Cole has looked at these things under a microscope. He's one of the people I've sent it to. There was it's called ICP-MS, and I don't even fully understand what that means, but I was contacted with Mike Adams, the health ranger, who did the ICP-MS analysis, and all that does is it breaks it down into the elements. Okay? Then in the late last year, I was contacted by some folks overseas, and I have to be careful on what I say because some of these things are still under research. But what I will say is they have verified Mike Adams' findings of the ICP-MS. They've had it replicated at least 3 other times from 2 separate laboratories overseas. Now, they have access to these labs. And it confirmed what Mike Adams found. They've also have done additional testing, and they're in the process of getting results back. And they are finding that this is not a typical blood clot. It doesn't have a lot of the markers for it to be what you would consider a typical blood clot. It has some elements of blood in it, but that's probably because there are some blood cells and some things that are going to be entrapped into it. And there's other things that are naturally in your body that are going to have, some of these markers for blood clots or markers for these, the clots being trapped, or the blood things being trapped within these clots.
Right.
But not in a significant number. I mean, what we're realizing is there is something that is in the blood that is out of balance. I kind of look at it like this. If you get a little bit of, I like to use a car engine. Your car engine, especially your newer cars, have specific oils that it needs to use to run, correct?
Sure.
If you were a little bit low on your engine oil, you could maybe get away with, I'm not advising anybody to do this, but let's just say you put a little, some vegetable oil into your car engine because you don't have the time, you don't want to pay the extra money for the expensive oil, and you add that to your engine oil to top it off. A little bit might cause a little bit of problem. You might not notice anything at all, right? Mm-hmm. But if you continue to put the wrong oil in that engine, eventually you're going to cause problems because vegetable oil doesn't belong in your car's engine.
Yeah.
Or even you could say, well, instead of using engine oil, I'm going to use some hydraulic oil or some other foreign oil. Your car still uses hydraulic oil.
Right. It kind of reminds me of like vaccines nowadays. It's like call any old thing a vaccine, just inject it into them. Just shove it in there and call it a vaccine.
Put it in there. And what's happening, I think, is what I've kind of, with some of the research that's going on, is the spike protein. And I had the honor of speaking to Dr. Sukrit Bhakti in a meeting along with the late Arnie Burkhart. causing inflammation. Vasculitis, Dr. Arnie Burkhardt talked about it before he died. Vasculitis is inflammation of the vascular system. That vasculitis is going to cause your liver to create an excessive amount of fibronectin in order to go in and patch up and try to heal the parts of your vascular system that become cracked or damaged due to the vasculitis.
Right.
Well, if your body's producing a whole bunch of fibronectin and things that are part of the clotting process, we're asking for a clotting problem in the future.
Yeah.
So I think what's happening is the spike protein, and this can be caused from the virus itself. Remember, they said that the spike protein alone can cause abnormal clotting. They said in 2021 they were...
The term spike sort of implies that, I would say.
Yeah, the spike is a little bit difficult to understand, but the spike is full of these little proteins that are all over it. All of these little proteins have jobs. They all have purposes. They all have things. And a lot of the proteins that are on that spike protein itself are phosphorus in nature, and they can bind and link to other things, creating a chain reaction. And people will hear about it. Like I ask anybody, or please look up VITT. Look it up, and it is related to the COVID vaccine, and it's vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
And it's not linked to the virus. It's linked to the vaccine.
Right. I mean, I've even heard of, sorry to say this, guys, thrombosis of the penis is a listed side effect. I mean, I didn't realize thrombosis was such a vast thing. I thought, that's the permeating of the blood-brain barrier. But apparently it's any sort of permeating of a membrane that can happen, I guess, throughout your body. It's one of the outstanding features of these terrible products. And I would like to ask you, Richard, in terms of, I saw you recently in an interview with John O'Looney from the UK, and he's another embalmer, mortician who's witnessed the same horrific clotting that you've seen and brought to public attention. Could you give us an update in terms of how many embalmers are speaking out at this point? Is it a sizable number? Is there a little coalition forming? Would be one question. I mean, we spoke recently to Dr. Kimberly Biss, who's OBGYN, and she's observed some really terrible things in her field, and she reports that a very small number of people have the courage of speaking out publicly. There's considerable more people who are whispering behind the scenes but don't want to get caught in the crossfire, right? In the crosshairs of the assault against medical freedom, outspoken medical freedom activists, people of goodwill, call us what you will. But give us an update in terms of the embalmers and what kind of coalition has been formed. And also, I just want to point out before you answer that, because it really is striking to me in terms of what you have presented to the world, Richard Hirschman. It's like it would be pretty incredible to fake that. I mean, talk about conspiracy theory. I mean, this is the most elaborate conspiracy theory I've ever heard, to suggest that somehow you fabricated this, and then other embalmers are able to emerge and fabricate something where actually they're producing and showing a bizarre physical substance. I mean, how would someone even go about faking such a thing? So, I've referred to this whole situation as the Twilight Zone. And here, once again, I'd like to point out, we have a Twilight Zone scenario on our hands, guys. Part of the goal of this program, of my Substack articles, is just to try to get a grip on reality again, when reality's been torn away from us. And when I say Twilight Zone in this case, I'm referring to the fact that, on the one hand, we have these gross clots, which are just horrifying in the first place. But then we have the equally horrifying non-response to the presentation of these substances, of this clotting content that's been found in people. I mean, it's like I said, it's almost science fiction. It defies reality that, one, this stuff has appeared suddenly, and the authorities, the citizens, we're not concerned about this. I mean, how could that be? So where do we stand in terms of people speaking out in your profession, Richard?
Well, we're still very few in number publicly speaking out. Now, John O'Looney, a great hero, I commend him for speaking out. I heard him speak on one of those little Facebook things that he was trying to warn people. He didn't show images of what I was seeing, but he was describing what I was seeing. And I want to say that was in the fall of 2021. So he was out trying to warn people before I was. And of course, Facebook quickly removed him and removed his content, made it really hard for people to see what was happening. But in many of his interviews, he talks about how he was in a meeting in September of 2021. Dr. Sukrabhakti was there, and many others. And so he knew a lot of this stuff back then. And it just so happens it was in September of 2021 when I took the first photographic image of what I was seeing. When I had only 3 images, I shared it with my doctor, who calls in another doctor to look at them. They're just baffled. They didn't know what it was. They didn't understand it, but they found it fascinating to look at. And then, quickly told me, well, that's really weird. You need to go ahead and get the COVID-19 vaccine, because if you do, you'll be 95% that you would never get it. And we already know that's what they said, 95%. We have downloaded copies of the Pfizer and Moderna paperwork that said it was about 95%. When I came out in January, the only thing that I did a little different from John O'Looney, and it's not trying to take anything away, was I brought the photographic evidence of what I was seeing. It wasn't just I was talking about blood clots, because it's one of the reasons why I took the pictures, because as I'm talking to people about blood clots, blood clots. I mean, we've seen blood clots for years. And I'm like, no, these are different. So I started documenting in September of 21, and I don't take pictures of all of them. I don't take samples. I didn't start taking samples until probably around March or so of 2022, when I was being asked by some pathologists and doctors if they could get a hold of some samples so they could look at it. Coalition, I'm not going to say we have a coalition.
Yeah, I was being optimistic when I put that word on the table.
No, I know. But what did happen is, after the movie Died Suddenly came out, the documentary, there was a gentleman by the name of Thomas Haviland, and he's a retired Air Force major and contractor, whatever. Anyway, he was curious. He was like, "Wait, what's going on?" So he made him and his friend, a lady who got to know him, named Laura Kasner, put together a survey. And at the end of 2022 and the early, December 22 to January 23, they put out a survey. And at that time, 66 embalmers that answered the survey, which was not very many, very few actually answered the survey.
Yeah.
But of the, I don't remember what the exact number was. It was about maybe 100 and I'll just say somewhere around 130. 66% of them said they were seeing these clots.
Wow.
Then he redid the survey again the end of 23 and into January of this year. And it was 73% are now acknowledging that they're seeing these clots. Now, that's a lot of people. And he had a much better response in the second survey than he did the first one, even though it still wasn't very much. There was a whistleblower on Philip McMillan's show, VJohn Health, who works in a cath lab. He came out anonymously and was interviewed on his show, and if people can find it on Philip McMillan's Substack, that they are pulling out these white fibrous clots out of living people. There was another whistleblower that was going to come out, but something caused him to go into silence. And the last message that I had seen, he was told to end any further communications in this regard.
Wow.
So something is trying to tell people to stop talking about it or don't talk. Is it a spouse? Is it their employees? Is it this, that, and the other? The reason why I think I'm able to speak in John O'Looney and a handful of others, there's another one by the name of, his name is Wallace Hooker. He's spoken out. There's another one up in Canada. Her name is Laura Jeffrey. She's spoken out. The ones that are speaking out are kind of independent. We don't work per se for a funeral home, or they own their own place. Like John O'Looney owns his funeral home.
Right.
He's not controlled by a corporation. I can tell you when I worked for a corporation, if we discuss things that we saw in the bombing room, it's automatic termination.
Right.
It's not like we're being, told not to say anything. It's the fear of losing your job. But with what I was seeing, something is very, very wrong. And even now, I mean, if we find out that this was not caused by the vaccines at all, but it's caused by, I don't know, maybe everybody's drinking, I don't know, let's blame it on whatever product.
Right. A new light
Either
beer.
way, then we still need to get to the bottom of the cause of this, because this change happened in early 21. It continues to this day. Unfortunately now, Jeremiah, this has kind of become the new normal.
Yeah.
This is just how it is now.
Yeah.
And people are starting to forget when they started seeing it. They're going to like, oh, yeah, well, I've seen these. Well, when did you start seeing them? I don't know. It's been a while. I mean,
Right.
maybe I've always seen them.
Right.
And so we're going to lose track of history.
Right.
And it's just going to become the new norm.
Yeah. Well, we had some callers on the line earlier, and they hung up. We will hopefully take calls before the end of this program. The number, as always, is 888-874-4888, 888-874-4888. But I would like to ask you in terms of, I kind of made some assumptions in my comments earlier, but I've seen many interviews with you. I've been in Twitter spaces with you. I don't recall you making any announcement in terms of a great breakthrough in terms of people recognizing the problem of what you've underscored in terms of your findings. What has been the process of you, whatever the word is, sounding the alarm about what you found? Have you tried to present this to the FDA? Have you tried to present this to the CDC? Could you walk into a local police precinct with a jar of these gruesome clots and say, hey, I don't know exactly how to report this crime, but, this needs to be recognized officially? What have you done to try to get some official response to this, and what has been the response from official bodies?
That's a good question that you bring up. I did not go to any, of course, I know coroners, I know some coroners, they know what I see. I tell them. I've told them, they've seen it themselves. That is above my game. I'm not required to report just whatever. if I see a knife sticking out of the back of an individual that's on the table, and there was no investigation, I'm obligated. Look, there's foul play here. This needs to be looked at. I've only had very, very. I'm talking maybe only twice in my career that I've actually called the coroner and said, hey, there's something that doesn't look normal here, and you need to be aware of it. And are you aware of it? I am not an investigator. I'm not a police officer. I'm not that person. I did not go directly to the CDC, the FDA, or any of those people, outside of talking to some of the coroners that I know. Why? Well, look what they did to the doctors that spoke out. They try to shut them down.
That's
if
true.
They won't listen,
which really, to me, guys, is clear evidence of corruption. They're not acting in good faith, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. If their first reaction is to criticize, and they criticized me. It was within days. PolitiFact came out and basically did a hit piece on me and said I'm mostly false. That's what they do. Why go out to them? Now, I did find out later on, just within the last, 6 months or so, that I was talking to an individual who said they were contacted by the FDA after I shortly came out, wanting to know if I was legitimate. So they know about me. They knew about me. Have they ever contacted me? No, they've never contacted me. I've had nothing from any of those. Tom Haviland, that did the survey, he submitted his survey results to the CDC, the FDA, the NIH. He submitted. He's got a paper trail. So they know that it's not just me. They know that it's many people. But Jeremiah,
yeah.
This paper in October of 21 says SARS-CoV-2 spike protein causes abnormal clots. And these papers over here that I have on my left, dated as early as April 16th of 2021, of vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia, tells me they already knew it.
Yeah.
They already knew it.
Yeah.
And they
also,
continued on.
I also like to repeatedly point out it's a totally dubious line of reasoning and argument to compare the so-called medication, the medical intervention, with the disease. It's like, that's not very compelling if you're trying to sell me a medical intervention. It's not quite as bad as the disease. It's like no one was mandated to get COVID. If you get sick by something, it's unfortunate. You try to survive the illness and take care of yourself as well as you can. That's entirely different than a coercive mandate type of situation where people are getting sick and they say, oh, well, you would have gotten thrombosis from COVID anyway, probably. It's just such absurd reasoning they've imposed on us. Now, again, if you want to join the conversation, please call 888-874-4888. We'd love to hear from you, our medical freedom warriors, our staunch listeners and supporters of the Bassline. It's always great to hear from folks wherever you may be. But I'd like to ask you, and I would say, despite all that we've been through, Richard, there's some good things happening right now in terms of people speaking out. That recent New York Times article that said thousands of people believe they have been injured by the COVID vaccine. And, if they just fix that to say millions of people were injured by the COVID vaccine, then we'd be a little bit more honest in our language. But we have the New York Times article. We have Chris Cuomo coming out and giving a voice to the vaccine injured and apparently making a few appearances where he's kind of vaguely mentioning that he himself is vaccine injured. We have the AstraZeneca shot, the so-called Pride of Oxford, being recalled, being withdrawn from the market. So there's a lot of breakthroughs going on right now, and I want to encourage all of our listeners to not give in to fatigue of any kind. Now is a time to get more animated and to do whatever you can do personally to amplify this movement, because the dam is breaking, the facade is crashing down, and all hands on deck to expedite that process. But all that being said, Richard, what would you outline as some things that you would like to see for the medical freedom movement? What should be our goals moving forward? Because, I just have to say personally, and I don't want to get into this, but, there's been some unnecessary infighting here and there. As much as you might, disagree with somebody in one respect or another, how is that more important at any point than fighting the monstrosity before us? Right?
That's right. That's right. There is infighting that goes on, and it's so frustrating to see, because that's what they want us to do. They want us, these whatever elites, they're slowly coming out with these things, Jeremiah, because you can't hide the truth forever.
Right.
They're now starting to come out.
You see that meme? I think they have a meme where they say they didn't even have truth. What do they say? Fact checkers until the ugly truth started coming out.
That's true.
That's when the fact checkers suddenly appeared, when the ugly truth was coming up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, no, but this all plays into this thing. They pushed an experimental gene therapy on the world's population. They coerced individuals. They say, now they're trying to say we never forced anybody. It was all voluntary. These people that are speaking out now, the New York Times, the Chris Cuomo's, they're trying to cover their rear ends, because they were the ones mocking those that were injured. They were the ones mocking those that wouldn't get their gene therapy vaccine. And now they're trying to come out, and then that way everybody's going to just go, well, they've always said it was experimental, or they always said it was voluntary. Well, say that to the person who lost their job.
Yeah.
It was voluntary.
Right. And
now there's people that were coerced into it and are injured. And, of course, they tried to throw them off as extremely rare. This VITT that I see, if this is what I am seeing, then it is not rare.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they're overusing that word at this point. When you say rare, how rare is it at that point when you have to keep using the word, right?
That's right. And it's exactly right. Even whether these things are formed ante-mortem or post-mortem, that means before death or after death.
You know what? I also want to add quickly, too, it's like when they say rare, it's just so infuriating to me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's so infuriating to me in terms of, well, how rare is it? I keep bringing it up. Well, if it's 1 in a million, well, then we need to make a tribute to those people. If it was 100 people, if it was 200 people, acknowledge all of those people. Not just, they're just dead somewhere, they're buried somewhere, too bad for them, they were the rare case. We're not supposed to function like that as a society. We're not supposed to have that attitude towards other people. So why is that attitude being allowed to be the prevalent attitude in this situation?
Well, Jeremiah, didn't they tell us in the very beginning of the lockdowns, if it saves one life, it was worth it?
Right, exactly.
That's a great point. One life, it was worth shutting down the country.
Right.
Well, what about the thousands that have died? And I'm telling you, the injured, I have spoke to groups, some groups as high as 200, 300, 400 to 600 people. And when I ask the question, anybody in here knows somebody or is personally injured by the vaccine? And more than half of the room in every situation raises their hand. How is that rare?
Right.
How is that rare?
Right. And we have many mutual friends on Twitter who we know what their experiences are. It's just unconscionable what these people have been subjected to. I mean, these terrible neurological disorders, people whose spines are being deteriorated. I mean, very painful conditions, very difficult situations that people are in now in terms of quality of life. We actually have a call on the line. My friend Noel from Brooklyn who's always an outstanding caller, is on the line. Are you there, Noel? Can you hear me?
Yes, I am, and I know time is of the essence, so I know how radio works, so I'll make it very quick. In the military, I used to give shots. Before I gave the shots, I had to inform the individuals of what the side effects were. That was not done with this shot. The second thing is, speaking about the military, to segue with that, Navy corpsmen, they're like enlisted people on board ship. They're like doctors. There was a Navy corpsman that came out and spoke out against it, and I think that they fired him. Lastly, I was speaking to a police officer, NYPD here in New York City, and he said that the city said if you don't take the shot, that you lose your job. When he went down there, then the cop told me this himself. When he went down to get the shot, they had to sign that it was voluntary.
Wow.
So what do you have to hide?
Right.
So I leave that for another caller. Thank you, Jeremiah. Excellent job, as usual.
Thank you so much. Well, yeah, Noel is always on point, and great observations there. And, I've made the point before, but I think it's worth making again. Medical freedom attorney Aaron Seary makes such a great point when he says, how is it that the chainsaw industry doesn't have liability protection, and they don't claim that their product is safe? They somehow, as an industry, withstand whatever liability is inherent in this injury of making these dangerous objects. But the vaccine industry, which claims it makes a safe product, they do have liability protection. That doesn't make sense. We're just allowing so many things that just don't make sense in any plain sense of the word sense to just, again, be prevalent, to be the dominant way that we do things. And we just have to start insisting on not doing things in this incorrect manner anymore. We have to take responsibility and start ironing this stuff out. So, Richard Hirschman, we are on the last few minutes of our program here. First of all, you are, of course, on Twitter, so please follow Richard Hirschman on Twitter. Forward the images. They're gruesome images, unfortunately, but forward the images that he's captured, which is most certainly evidence for the world to see. That's HIRSH. I'm sorry, HIRSCHMAN. Pardon me. Richard Hirschman. Look him up on Twitter. And folks, please support this show by any means that you can. Go to my website, jeremiahhosea.com. Buy a song for $1. Please subscribe to my Substack. I have a cool article underway. I'm working on it. Be out in the next few days, hopefully. I will continue producing for my loyal supporters. And please do whatever you can do to amplify the voices of our movement, large and small. We have people like Mary Talley Bowden, who's leading an incredible initiative, a former guest on this show. We have Dr. Kat Lindley, has been very active in keeping people informed in terms of this effort to terminate this ridiculous WHO treaty, which would undermine our rights even further. We have Steve Kirsch, former guest on this show, Vaccine Safety Research Foundation. They had another heart-wrenching, very powerful presentation last night with a woman who lost her precious daughter to these terrible injections. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that you can do. Never think that there's nothing you can do. That's never the case. There's always some manner in which you can volunteer, you can donate a penny, you can just move the ball, down the field, just little by little, but we can all do something to help. We can all do something to raise awareness, to spread the word. And there's so many fronts on which we fight. There's the legal front, there's the medical recovery of the vaccine injured, there's the questioning of medical protocol across the board, and why is there so much iatrogenic injury being produced in our society? So many issues to concern ourselves with, and that's why we need all hands on deck. Richard, what would you like to say in closing in terms of, I already asked you sort of my last question in terms of your hopes for the medical freedom movement, but what would you add to your comments?
Yeah, I would like to add a little bit of hope. And that is, thank goodness that this whole thing was pushed out in a rapid response. Therefore, it's possible that not all these batches are the same. So just because people were vaccinated doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to die from this vaccine or they'll be injured. And I like to use a small analogy. Not everybody that smoked cigarettes dies of lung cancer. Yet we all know that smoking cigarettes can cause it. So stop denying that the vaccines are safe, because they're not. Not from what we are seeing and what we are learning. They're not safe. And nobody was forced to smoke cigarettes. So, be cautious. Do a little research before you continue to get any more of these gene therapy injections.
Right. And I often say, it's like it's kind of hard to say therapy, because I don't know if there's anything therapeutic about it. They don't seem very therapeutic, actually. But, again, they're not vaccines. But we're out of time here. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Bassline. I want to thank you, Mr. Richard Hirschman. Thank you for being courageous and for sharing your findings with the world, and I encourage you to continue doing so. You're a vital component in terms of the evidence being gathered. And we have another great guest, Dr. James Thorpe, next week. Everyone have a beautiful weekend, and take care of yourselves.
Have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you know the truth, and the truth is love.